Your number one Christian hit station presents Dog Watch. Former San Antonio police officer, author, and pastor Tim Rupp takes you through real-life scenarios and discusses excerpts from his books. You've never heard cop talk quite like this. Dog Watch starts now.
Hello and welcome to the Strong Blue Line.
What did you say?
You heard it right, Gary Austin. Welcome to the Strong Blue Line.
Yes, I love that, Tim Rupp.
Well, we're changing
I
it
love
up.
it.
You know, we're going into our third year.
Yeah,
And we call
We
it
are.
Dog Watch, and there's a reason why we call it Dog Watch, you know, and you know, it was at night during that late shift, but we've been on the daytime lately. We're still on that early morning shift on the weekends, 2 a.m.
we are.
on the rev.fm. But we're changing the name of the podcast. And so, you know, it goes with the Strong Blue Line Foundation. It's a ministry of the Strong Blue Line Foundation. And so name recognition for clarity purposes and what we're about, you know, we want to make the thin blue line a strong blue line.
I absolutely love it. That is
That's
great, you know, and of
So-
course it was Dog Watch because of the hour that it was
and the
originally
hours, right. Yeah, and it was.
aired.
You know, and a friend of mine who's a retired police officer recommended, he goes, why don't you just do with the Strong Blue Line? He goes, and you know what? We got to think about it, talk to you about it. He said, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So I wish I can claim that idea. I can't. That's why it was a good idea. It wasn't mine. Anyway, so we're changing the name over. You're going to see the intro. You're going to hear the intro. You're probably not going to see the intro. He's got a really good vision. You're going to hear the intro, and you're going to see it on the Rev. You're going to see the Strong Blue Line radio show, podcast, and of course you can catch the Strong Blue Line currently still. Well, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Look, Strong Blue Line, Dog Watch on Amazon, Google, Apple, Spotify podcast platforms.
Yes.
And of course, the archive shows are always on the rev.fm. So looking forward to that. Changes in 2024 as we're going through. And in case you didn't know it, Gary, winter arrived last week.
What?
Oh, yeah.
I've been waiting.
2 days of school canceled last week. And
Wow.
all this stuff going on with
Wednesday
the blizzards and
services
stuff.
were canceled.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
and the surprising thing, there wasn't a whole lot of snow,
Right.
a whole lot of wind. Wasn't a whole lot of snow in it, but what and people don't realize unless they live here, that wind just blows the snow and drifts it across the highways.
Yeah.
And they
Piles
become
it up.
super. Yeah, they become super. It piles it up, and so it's just trying
Yeah.
to stay ahead of it. So
That's rough.
anyways, chilly weather. So, in our brand new show, the Strong Blue Line, let's go to our Officer Down Memorial page, the officers we honor in history that have died in the line of duty on this day. And Gary, I've got one from 1869, January 17th, 1869, Sheriff Isaac Albert McLeod, Pickens County Sheriff's Office, Georgia. So this is
Okay.
Pickens
Southern.
County, Georgia. Says this here, Sheriff Isaac McLeod and Deputy Sheriff Joseph Brown received information that a man who escaped from a Tennessee jail for stealing a horse was at a farm several miles outside of Jasper.
Huh.
This is an old Western, you know.
It is.
The sheriff and his deputies going after a man who escaped from jail, wanted for stealing a horse. They located the man sitting at a table shaving inside the farmhouse. You can picture this. They go up to the farmhouse, they look inside, and there's a man, he's sitting at the table shaving. Now, he's at the table shaving, he's one of them straight razors, you know, he's probably not plugged in anywhere.
Right.
1869, when Sheriff McLeod, so he entered the house. When Sheriff McLeod put his hand on the man's shoulder and told him he was under arrest, the man reached down into his boot and pulled out a handgun. The man shot Sheriff McLeod in the chest, killing him instantly.
Wow.
Deputy Brown rushed into the room. Obviously, he wasn't there. He heard the shots. He rushed in the room, and the subject shot him. He died several days later.
Wow.
Yeah, they killed them both. The subject then stole the sheriff's horse and fled. Deputy Brown succumbed to his wounds, like I mentioned, on January 28th, 1869. Sheriff McLeod was a Confederate Army veteran of the Civil War, as was Deputy Brown. They were both. I looked up his information. Both Confederate Army veterans of the Civil War, and has served. The sheriff had served at the county for 2 years. He was 30 years old, survived by his wife and 2 children. Deputy Brown 25 years old and survived by his wife and 2 children.
So interesting. I mean,
yeah,
that is...
and I mentioned, this is tactics. Using proper tactics. Using proper tactics has been around as long as the profession.
Yeah, for sure.
Things haven't changed, but you would just never, it's old Western. You can just picture that.
Absolutely, and it was in Deep South.
It was, and it was in Georgia, and it came from Tennessee. So
yeah.
It was close by. I mean, they are border states. So.
Well, this is Deputy Sheriff Ray Elwin Horn III, end of watch on January 17th, 2019, so several years ago. He suffered a fatal heart attack shortly after participating in his agency's mandatory physical fitness testing. So, the mandatory. He had completed the testing and left the facility when he suffered the heart attack while driving his patrol car. His patrol car collided with 2 other vehicles at an intersection, and he was transported to the hospital where he was later pronounced dead. Deputy Horn was a U.S. Air Force veteran, and he had served with Comal County.
Comal County, it's pronounced.
Comal.
That's just north of Bear County where I lived.
I'll be darned.
Comal County, yep.
11 and a half years he served at the sheriff's office there. And he had a wife, 44, young.
Yeah, it wasn't old, 44 years old and died of a heart attack.
Yeah.
I saw his picture online, and, the deputy didn't, he may have been a little bit overweight, but not, it didn't look like he was huge, obese but so 44 years old, and he was doing his department's required mandatory physical fitness test. It's just, so we don't know if he had something that was hereditary.
Right.
We don't know exactly what happened, but officers need to keep themselves in shape as best they can, and sometimes we just never know, Gary.
I know, and that's just it, Tim, is that we just don't know. The healthiest of people sometimes have a heart attack.
Yeah, and we're gonna, and while we're on that, I didn't plan on talking about that, but I think this is an important thing to talk about right now. I went to a hospital call last week. I don't know the gentleman. Obviously, I'm not going to give his name or anything, but he was in his 60s, not that old, but he had already had 2 heart attacks in his life. And I went there I did not know the man. Somebody else called, and he did not go to church at Water Springs, but somebody was caring for him. They wanted a pastor to go and pray with him. So I went over there, and Gary, I told him, I said, look, I'm Pastor Tim, and I'm known for my bluntness. And he came back in. He was talkative and stuff. He was upbeat and everything. I said, I'm gonna ask you 2 questions. He said, okay. And I said, number 1, do you want me to pray for your healing? And he said, yes. I said, okay, I'll do that. I said, number 2, do you know where you're going to go if you died right now? And he kind of looked at me. I said, I don't care if you die 10 years from now, 10 months from now, or 10 minutes from now. Where are you going to go? And so that's so important. That's like this policing, The officer he wasn't involved in the shooting.
Mm-hmm.
He was just, he was going about his regular job, doing his regular mandatory training, and he died of a heart attack. So that's so important, Gary, is for officers, and not only officers, but anybody to know where they're going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Not this hope, well, I hope I go, I hope I'm good enough. The Bible tells us that we've all sinned, fall short of the glory of God.
Yeah, right.
But the Bible also says that we can know that we have eternal life. Those who believe upon Jesus' name know that they have eternal life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a I hope so salvation, or I guess so, or depending upon a church or a pastor or a priest or a bishop or good works. It's depending upon Jesus Christ and Him alone for your salvation. That's so important. And as we read things like this, officers being killed in the line of duty, but then we should see, this guy just had a heart attack, 44 years old.
Mm-hmm.
All of us will face that one day.
Yeah,
we'll have that point. So
certainly will. No, that's a good point. That's good spot to throw that in there.
Okay,
Tim.
Last week we were going to do the good, the bad, and the ugly. We did the good and the bad, but we didn't get to the ugly.
No,
but we've got the ugly for today.
Oh.
And so we're actually going to we're talking about indicting officers, and this is from last month, from December. This was published December 8th in Law Enforcement Today. The title of the article is Assault Charges Dropped Against 17 Austin Police Over over tactics used during 2020 George Floyd protests. 17 police officers. Gary, there's a lot of departments that don't have 17 officers on them, on the whole
Right.
agency.
Exactly.
But here's 17 officers whose charges were dropped. Let me read. I'm going to read down through this, and we'll just make comments along the way. I thought this was very interesting. Austin, Texas. A prosecutor whose office oversaw indictments against more than 20 Austin police officers for tactics used during the 2020 protest that followed George Floyd's killing announced that he was dropping most of the cases and would ask the Justice Department to investigate instead. The announcement is a setback for Travis County District Attorney Jose Garza, a Democrat who was elected months after the protest and ran on promises to hold police accountable in the Texas Capitol. Garza said that his office would dismiss indictments against 17 but still move forward with prosecuting 4 others. Gary, they filed state felony charges against over 20 officers, and 17 of them he's dropping after 3.5 years.
Man.
This prosecutor must take some responsibility.
Exactly.
You just don't go out and willy-nilly charge people with felony offenses, indict them, and then have that hanging over them for 3.5 years. These officers don't know if they're going to lose their jobs. They don't know if they're going to go to prison. They don't know what's going on. And so it's not only the officers have families.
Absolutely.
They have lives to live. They need to get along with this. I am not saying not to investigate actions of officers.
Right.
I'm absolutely for that. I worked the last 5 years on the police department. I worked internal affairs. I investigated officers. That's what I did. When I was working sex crimes, I arrested a police officer. It didn't give me a great thrill to do that, but it needed to be done. He had committed some serious felonies, and we arrested him. We are not going to turn our officers are not going to turn their backs on other officers doing things wrong.
Right.
We're going to do and
Exactly.
They need to be held accountable. But just going out and willy-nilly charging 20 officers during the protest time. Anyways, let me go on here. Get off my high horse and go on this. The state felony charges were by far the most indictments of officers from a single U.S. police department following the nationwide protest in 2020 over racial injustice and police brutality. Them are some charge words there.
Yes.
It doesn't say over
I agree.
alleged racial injustice and police. It just over racial and police brutality. Some Austin police officers fired big beanbag rounds into the crowd, critically injuring a teenager. Austin Mayor Kirk Watson, a Democrat who was not in office at the time of the protest, says this, quote, "This has been a difficult chapter for Austin. I look forward to turning the page. These announcements will allow police officers whose lives were upended by the indictments to return their services to our community." How do you think them officers feel about that, Gary?
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, really, you're going to invite us now back.
Exactly.
After 3.5 years, we've been sitting and waiting.
Yeah.
I pray the officers do go back, and they do go back with the proper attitude and do their job, regardless of what people say or do. And this is another thing, Gary. Officers have to take it on the chin, you know, from people that call them names. We saw over, remember that 2020, you saw the people yelling and screaming in officers' faces, throwing things at them, throwing
Yes.
water and beer and other unmentionable stuff, and they're just taking it. And
Because they feel like, either feel like they're not really a threat, but it's almost like they can't do anything.
well, they've got to hold. They're told to stand down.
Yeah.
They're told to take that. These are at least misdemeanor assault charges, if not felony assault charges, and the officers are not making the arrest.
Right.
Because they don't have the backing. Some of them don't have the backing from their administration. Some of them do. But many of them don't have the backing from the district attorney's office or the government leaders. You know,
Exactly.
the cities or the governors, whatever it is.
Yep.
Garza has not explained why he has decided to drop most of the cases. That is unacceptable.
I agree.
He needs to explain what he's doing. Out of the many officers who were indicted in February of 2022, none of them have gone on trial. Get this, Gary. Republican Governor Greg Abbott floated the idea of pardons after the charges were handed down by the grand jury. God bless Greg Abbott.
Yeah, that's right.
Now I know Governor Abbott would not just go out there and willy-nilly dismiss charge or give out pardons. He would investigate and make sure.
Sure.
But he was just like, you know what? We're not playing these stupid games. And Garza said this. This is the district attorney. Garza said his office would, quote, continue to hold law enforcement who break the law accountable. Now, so why don't you just say we will continue to hold people who break the law accountable?
Exactly.
You can hold everybody accountable. Why are you going out targeting law enforcement? Well, he said he was going to run on that. He said he was going to do that instead of saying, you know what, we're going to go after criminals. I don't care if the criminals are wearing a uniform or not. If you're a criminal, you're a criminal. In the letter to the Justice Department, Garza asked prosecutors to review Austin police use of force for crowd control during the protests. Ken Irvin, an attorney who represents 9 of the officers whose charges will be dismissed, called the indictments a combination of politics and incompetence. He continues, Mr. Garza has not really taken the chance to educate himself on police tactics. Maybe he's finally done that. Officers do things for a reason. And I mean, I remember in the police academy, we went through riot control training. I mean, and we used things back when I went for riot control training, CS gas, and the pepper spray wasn't out yet, but we had CS gas and we had riot batons, 36-inch riot batons. And we were taught how to strike and how to hit people without causing death. We were told we're not to hit, can't hit in the throat and things like that, can't hit on the head unless there's a deadly threat against you. But you're to strike in certain areas. Will it cause pain? Yeah, it will cause pain. But we're taught riot control. Despite widespread claims of heavy-handed or even illegal police tactics across the U.S. following the 2020 protests, few cities pursued charges. 2 Dallas officers faced charges of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and official oppression. And a New York police officer was charged with assault after shoving a woman to the ground. In October, a former Minneapolis police officer was sentenced to 15 days in a county workhouse with eligibility for electronic home monitoring after pleading guilty to assaulting a black man during the arrest that followed Floyd's death. So there you go. You got an officer that actually pleaded guilty to assault. Okay, if that was the case, if that's what happened, he pled guilty, then he got sentenced. He got arrested to it. The city of Austin has paid over more than $18 million. Boy, I would love to have $18 million to fix these roads around here.
Exactly.
$18 million to settle lawsuits brought on by protesters injured during the protest, including one college student who suffered brain damage after an officer shot him with a beanbag round. 8 other lawsuits were still pending, according to the city. I'm thinking the city's going to be facing more lawsuits when these officers,
exactly.
They've done this to their lives, and all of a sudden they drop them without. Now, the district attorney don't work for the city; he works for the county, Travis County. So the county may be paying, but it's
true.
Travis
But
County.
still,
you live in the city; you're still paying county taxes coming out of your pockets. There, Austin people.
Yep.
Austin Police Association President Michael Bullock said prosecutors has yet to prove any case where officers committed wrongdoing. Our officers were faced with incredible and unprecedented challenges. In those extremely difficult times, they acted within the law and upheld their oath to keep the city safe.
Now, I think this $18 million lawsuit, so it says including a college student who suffered brain damage after an officer shot him with a beanbag round. Now, just reading that, you would think, well, the officer was in the wrong if he shot him in the head, because you're thinking, okay, brain damage because of the beanbag. But in my mind, I'm like, well, it doesn't explain that maybe he got him in the side or on the leg. He fell, hit his head.
Could be. You know, and a beanbag round is what they call less lethal force.
Sure.
They used to call it less force, whatever, but less lethal force. And you're trained to shoot for the chest, or with a beanbag round, you're even shot to shoot for the arm and stuff because there's not a deadly threat to you, so you have time to make them decisions. But the beanbags are not all that accurate, and sometimes they go awry.
Oh, okay.
And so that's not, and you're pumped up, you're doing things, and maybe aim for the chest, and just as you're pulling the trigger, the guy trips,
right,
and he gets hit in the head.
Exactly.
But a beanbag to the head should not cause damage. It's like you said, but maybe he tripped and fell and stuff. And there's I mean, and then, you know, what about the beanbag manufacturer?
Exactly.
The shotgun manufacturer. I mean, there's so many things, you know.
Yeah, it's just
terrible,
very sad.
It is. You know, and the thing is, does an 18-year-old college, or I'm not sure how old he is, but does this college student have a right to go down there and to protest and have freedom of speech? Yes, he or she does.
Sure.
But they don't have the right to riot.
Right.
To be involved.
There's
in
a difference.
Riot. There is a difference.
Huge difference. Yep.
So let's go on here. Garza said that the charges in Austin were not politically driven, although he ran on that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
He emphasized that his office prosecuted more than 30 non-officers. So, okay, you got, how many people were there protesting and rioting? Hundreds and thousands? And you got 30 of them?
Yeah.
How many policemen do you have? You got 20-some policemen. Like, come on.
Yeah.
The announcement by Garza comes weeks after a mistrial was declared in a high-profile trial involving an Austin police officer who was charged with murder in the death of Michael Ramos, who was unarmed and shot as he tried to drive away from police who were attempting to arrest him in April of 2020. The case was prosecuted by Garza's office and ended up after the jurors were unable to reach a verdict. So there you go. I think the handwriting was on the wall. They said, oh, we lost this case.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we don't want to go through and lose all these other cases. I'll just drop them so I don't have to be humiliated 17 times.
Yeah.
I'll just do it one time.
Well, that's a good example of the ugly. The bad, the good, the bad, the ugly.
It is.
Right there.
It's terrible. And I've got something to mention here with the thought from the good book. But before we do that, hey, thanks for listening in today. If you have a topic, question, or that you want addressed on the Strong Blue Line podcast.
Strong Blue Line.
Send me an email. Hey, we need to update, or are we going to update the email?
Yes.
So we'll do Strong Blue Line at the Rev?
Yeah.
Okay, Strong Blue Line at the Rev. That's the email, but
yeah,
you can still do it to Dog Watch at the Rev if you have anything you want to tell to us.
Yeah.
And a thought from the good book today, and this is what I talked about, Gary. You know, we talked before we came on air. So what should we do as Christians? How should we handle public officials? And I said, here's what we need to do. Number one, we need to pray.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, we need to vote.
Yes.
Number two, we need to run for office.
Yeah.
Number three, we need to vote. Number four, we need to pray.
Yeah.
So we just need to pray for these people. And that was my idea. Again, the good book says this: I urge that prayers, intercessions, and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings, and for all who are in high positions, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life. Thank you for joining us, and help us to make the thin blue line a strong blue line.
Dog Watch is brought to you by the Strong Blue Line and your number one Christian hit station. Send your comments and questions to dogwatch@therev.fm. You can download the Dog Watch episodes from therev.fm, as well as offer your financial support for this program. Be encouraged, be strengthened, be enabled in your faith with Dog Watch.